Hi everyone, and welcome back to Fairview. In today's episode, we're going to start off by placing down this high school. And then later on in the episode, I work on some suburbs. With this building that I'm placing down now, I've converted it into procedural objects so that it won't muck around with the terrain and things. And I've done the same with the one next to it, of course. And was just trying to line it up here so that they would kind of fit together without having those doorway or entranceways in the way, should I say. So with the high school here, I actually wanted to create a custom one, but haven't. I mentioned this in episode 5, and I was like super optimistic about getting it done and everything. I got the 3D model done, but when it came to texturing, I was having a lot of trouble with it because the texture mapping didn't really work out how I wanted it to, and I was hoping to reuse textures but couldn't really work out how to do that in 3ds Max easily. So I kind of abandoned that idea and went with a building off the workshop instead. So here you can see that I've placed down this building here. It could be a gym because I initially wanted it to be like a storage room for like sports equipment and things, but I placed down another building shortly over by some of the other fields, and I guess that one could act as storage equipment, and the building to the left of the screen, the bottom left that is, could be the gym, I guess. I think it's big enough. I haven't really measured it, but let's just assume that it's big enough and go with that, because I didn't really place down a gym building specifically, as I forgot about it. So here I've placed down the American football field, not football if you're from Europe, that'd be soccer in American, and also a football field or soccer field if you are. I've just completely confused myself now, haven't I? Soccer field. We'll go with soccer because that'll get confusing otherwise. And here's this other shed that I built and converted it into procedural objects. I just placed down the little field activities thing there. Kind of the cut kind of came through just as I placed that down. And here I'm just doing some detailing and placing down some signs around the high school so that I guess it's supposed to say high school. I think it says like H something on it. I can't really remember. It's a bit hard to see here with the shadows and all, but it says like HS or something on it or something like that. And I'm just moving these paths kind of in front of these doorways so that people could technically walk onto the street and things. Speaking of people walking, the soccer field, I think, becomes really busy once I unpause the game and people start really kind of using it a lot, which is kind of annoying because most of the time it probably isn't used. I imagine that there, might be some sports trainings during the week and obviously like sports competitions and stuff that use the fields on Saturday mornings or something. But yeah, sometime it would be abandoned, and since it's maybe mid-autumn, the soccer season and football season might have started. Again, this is kind of confusing because it's like American football and then soccer, because if I say football, then it really does get confusing. So now I've moved on to working on the first houses for the episode. These ones are slightly on the smaller side in terms of the lot size, but are about the same size as the ones across the street. And I'll be working on suburbs for pretty much the rest of the episode. And I'll actually get quite a bit done this episode, as you'll see. So instead of working on suburbs for the next few episodes, like I mentioned in the previous episode, I think this will be it for suburbs for now, and I think I'm going to move on to a train station next episode. Or at least try and get some railways built down for a train station. And just filling in the space with a short little street to kind of bridge that gap, because I wasn't really sure what else to do here. In this area, soon you'll see that I'm using some greener trees. I think they're like the London trees or something by Mr. Mason. And yeah, that was just to fill in the back spaces there. And then we'll move on to the main part of the suburbs, where I build out like some smaller block. It's slightly narrower. Instead of being 15 units by 45 units, it's only 11 units by 45 units. Not this one, but the next one, because this one's still in the old grid with 15 units by 45 units, but soon I'll move on to some smaller blocks. And since I kind of lost track of where I am now, I'll tell you that I'm going to build some houses here, obviously. And I'll leave you with some music for a few minutes, because I've been talking long enough. Okay, so with the block that I worked on before, I placed down some poles and swing sets behind the houses in the empty spaces to try and kind of fill them up a bit more because they looked really empty. I mean, I guess some people's backyards might be empty, but not the majority of people's. And with this block, I've made the lot slightly shorter so that we don't get any of that empty space behind the houses, and it'll just be filled in with trees and not much else. I'm kind of not sure, but I might have put some trees in the swimming pools of these houses because I did kind of just went through after I put these houses down and just put a whole lot of trees in between, so I might have put some trees on the swimming pools, but I'm not really sure. And also with the last block, you would have seen me open up Move It and save it. This was just kind of in case I wanted to use that block again at some point in the episode, or maybe even later on in the series. Currently they're still saved in Move It, and I saved this block at some point as well, so that's also there if I want to use it again. I'll probably delete them at some point though, because they're taking up space and I don't really know how much that affects how the game performs. So we'll see. Anyway, they just make things a lot faster if I already had blocks ready to go and could just smash out some suburbs really quick. But it's also kind of that trade-off of making things look unique versus just basically plopping the same thing down all across the city. So I might try and work on a few different things. Over the other side, it's pretty much all the American eclectic theme, whereas over here it's kind of a few of those houses and the vanilla houses and some from the American City Content Creator Pack. And if you did watch episode 5, I think it was, I put some really modern houses over the other side of the city too, kind of along the cliffs. So let's move on now, and I just want to draw your attention to what was going on after I filmed this episode, and basically the population grew from about 4,500 to 11,000 by the end of this episode. As you can see now, I've unpaused the game at some point while I've been talking here, so that the city starts growing, and I didn't get a huge population influx at the end of this episode when I unpaused it. I mean, I still kind of did because this was on a relatively short time span, and I had a huge death wave afterwards, but yeah, I think things are getting better. I have that one church that acts as a cemetery in the city, and it only had 2,000 and something people in it, and I couldn't work out why it wasn't picking people up. But then I worked out that with the Empty It mod, I think it's called, it automatically empties your cemeteries and trash dumps or whatever, garbage dumps automatically. And since it must have kicked in, and since it kept reactivating every time I tried to turn the empty function off, so my cemetery wasn't emptying and wasn't functioning, so I ended up putting in a few crematoriums and a temporary cemetery as well, but I removed them after the episode when everything was fixed. And yeah, after the episode there was also something else going on. I can't remember. Oh, there was some pollution by the building that's supposed to be a gym in the high school, so I ended up turning that off, I think. I haven't saved that bit because it was a tiny thing that I did during recording some cinematic shots or taking some photos or something, and it just looked really weird because you had the pollution there, and I don't have that mod that turns off what the pollution looks like yet, because I didn't think I'd need it since I have no industry here yet. So yeah, that was the whole death care thing that went on. I think it's fixed now, and there was one other thing that I wanted to draw your attention to, but I've forgotten what it was about. So yeah, here I've just been like filling up the kind of where the two grid spaces meet. I've had to do this by hand, and yeah, so just placing down some more houses in there instead of copying them all. And yeah, this is kind of a lot closer to the main road. Oh, the other thing I wanted to talk about was the location of the high school. So, as the title of this video, the title of this video says, it's the first high school in the city. I don't think I mentioned that earlier though. But it's located relatively close to the downtown, but not within it, so I guess at the moment other people from the other side of the city could travel through the downtown to get to the high school. I'm thinking of creating a bus depot fairly soon, maybe like 2 episodes time, and then I'll put in some public transit and like school bus lines with the new school buses from the campus patch, I think it was, the like free patch that came out or something. So I'm thinking of adding those in a few episodes time, as I've said already. And here I just kind of like with these blocks, I wanted them to snap to the grid, but they kind of became difficult sometimes, so I had to turn that snapping thing off. Because like since the fences were originally in the grid, there's like that little bit of space, and I wanted to keep that relatively even, but it didn't really work out, and it just kept like all the houses kept snapping to different places, and it just became a bit of a mess. So like I cut a lot of bits out where I was just like basically trying to line up all these blocks of houses into the right place. I think there was one where I cut out like a solid like 25 seconds of me just trying to like align these houses, which equates to like nearly 2 minutes of gameplay, which is insane. And so in this block it's kind of a lot larger, and I'll put a like small little cul-de-sac road down in between it soon. Another thing you might have noticed that I've been doing this episode is varying the fences a bit. So like instead of just using like the wooden forestry fence or something, I've kind of used like the steel oil fence or something as well, and the damn it, I've forgotten what the other fence is. It's one of the park fences. The white one, anyway, is one of the park fences. And here's that little cul-de-sac that I was talking about before. And just like after I did this, I kind of went around a few times and tweaked some things, as you'll see in a cut very soon. Or, oh no, I think it already cut through it, but it wasn't much. It was just like basically moving a few things around, or it might be right now, yeah. Yeah, it was just right now. Okay, so I just like basically tried moving the ploppable asphalt over like the pedestrian crossing, but it wasn't really working, and I think it's because that road isn't like sunken like all the other ones. So it just turned into a mess, and I ended up cutting that out and not doing it. But here I'm just placing down the houses and more trees and things like I have been doing all episode, when I haven't just been copying and pasting them all. And so kind of after I finished this, I stopped for a bit and thought this would be the end of the episode, but I ended up kind of throwing in a few more blocks, which you'll see kind of I start doing in maybe like a minute's time. No, like 30 seconds time, I think, is when I move on over there. But yeah, after that I work on a park, which you'll see when I get there, I guess. And so yeah, I've been doing YouTube for like 10 episodes now, if you include that little short introduction thingy that I did before I released it before I released episode 1 anyway. But I actually recorded it afterwards, but you probably can't tell because like it's kind of, I'm still a bit nervous, and to be honest, I kind of am now when recording this, and it's kind of a struggle sometimes to basically just sit down and press record, because yeah, I still get a bit nervous about recording these things, but I mean, I'm relatively new to this, so it's okay. I mean, I'd like to think that I've improved over the last few episodes, because there was like one point where I was basically scripting everything. I think there was like episodes 4, 5, and 6 or something, and I don't know, just try to change things up, and like this episode I haven't even written any notes whatsoever, as you might be able to tell by my like pauses like that one just there. But I don't know, I'm just basically trying to work out what works for me first, because like I have learnt a lot so far, I think anyway, and I'm trying to like improve something every time. Like with the thumbnails of this episode and the last episode, I've kind of modified them a bit to make the tree colours stand out a bit, and I've basically been adjusting the like text on those thumbnails too to make it a bit larger and things. And here we're moving on to the park that I mentioned earlier, and we will be working on this for a relatively short period of time, and that will bring us to the end of the video once I've done this. But anyways, with this park, I kind of wanted to keep it relatively open, so I haven't really placed much down, just a few trees scattered along the kind of boundary where the roads are, and put down a little fountain at the intersection of those paths there. And yeah, I think this is just maybe like a quiet place that people could go to if they wanted to take a break or just run around, because obviously they don't have very big backyards. But anyway, now here's the cinematic shots. It's kind of a lot to take in because I did get quite a bit done this episode. But if you've enjoyed this video, you can leave a like, and if you're new to the channel, then you should subscribe for more if you've enjoyed this one anyway. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you next week.